back to work. Got a chance to train a little bit long course over her spring break. Rolling up to the Mesa Grand Prix. I'm looking for another check mark in the box. 156, 405, 820. We're looking good here. Check. Went right back to work again, starting to get ready for World Championship trials. I figured I'd be really smart. Instead of giving her 3 days rest, I'd give her 7 to 10 days rest, okay? Boy, was that wrong. Dove in and went 822 in the 800 and was lousy. Way overswam the front half of the race. Her turns were poor. She let other people stay in the race when they had no business being in the race. Dove in the next day and went 157 in her 200 free, not even as fast as she'd been in the Mesa Grand Prix. Earned an individual spot in both of those. I thought we were very fortunate in both cases. Then she had an off day in the middle there. Probably the first time I felt like I really needed to coach Katie was then. She'd been poor the first couple days. She sort of knew it. We'd gotten our World Championship berths with people were saying, oh, that was all that was important. But I grabbed her on her off day and I said, come on, we're going to go do a workout. And she's like, well, what do you mean we're going to do a workout? I said, well, you're off today and we didn't rest that much for this meet, so we need to go do a workout. And what I was really doing was just trying to help her with her confidence, which is so important to all of them. And don't kid yourselves. The 10-year-olds, the 18-year-olds, the 28-year-olds all need it. So then I started selling her on that we didn't rest for World Championship trials. It's okay that you swam slowly. Somebody asked us how far we swam. I made up a number. I don't know whether that's how far we swam or not. Next thing I know, I hear Rowdy reporting that we did 12,000 meters between sessions or something like that, and all was good. Her 400 wasn't much better, 404, it was a little bit better. And about this point, I'm thinking about the World Championships, and I know that that's a hefty schedule there. The 200, the 400, the 800, the 1500, and a relay, prelim, semis, finals of the 200s, trials and finals of the 800 and the 1500. And I didn't think we had trained enough to tackle that whole schedule. So I started planting the seed or talking to myself about, you know what, maybe we shouldn't swim the 1500 at World Championships. So when you talk about not training to break the world record in the 1500, we weren't even going to swim it. At least I wasn't even going to have her swim it. It was early in the week. I knew swimming trials and finals would take a lot out of her. She had talked about setting the world record in the 800 was at the end of the week. So I'm thinking we're probably not going to swim the 1500. She goes 15:47, fastest time in the world that year. She gets out of the water and says to me, I can't wait to swim that again at World Championships. I just kind of didn't say anything. Agonized about it for a little while overnight, thought about it, looked at the schedule, talked to some people that were invested in it also, you know, Frank Bush and Jack Roach and a couple others, and we decided she would drop the 200 and swim the 1500. I still had my reservations. I didn't know whether we had trained enough, hard enough, the idea of swimming a schedule like that, 2 400s, 2 1500s, an 800 free relay, and 2 800s at the end. But so that's the schedule that we were looking at to start with. And I think the order of events played as much into what we were going to drop as anything else. She definitely wanted to swim the relay. She got out of the 1500. She was the one who knew it was the fastest time in the world. She keeps track of those things. She's a student of the sport. And we pulled it out. We still had 5,600 meters worth of racing to do, but we did have a day off. And I thought that was important for her also. Going into Barcelona, there were several things that I thought were key to her success. I'm on time here. Her race tempo. I knew we wanted to swim in that 1:38 range for her to be successful. At least in the 400 and the 800, that's where we wanted to swim. She needed to manage her legs. That's the terminology that we had started using, and she seemed to understand it. She still has a tendency to want to go out too fast, too hard with her legs. She needed to control her speed. Her underwaters had become a weapon that we could use. We started talking about winning the underwaters. and maybe we'll get a chance to see some of the races. Manage the schedule, manage your energy, and have some fun while she were there. I thought all those things were important to keep in mind. Those of you that haven't been on a world championship team or any of the senior travel teams, I think it's real important for the kids to have fun. Whatever energy that they can save is great, but they need to enjoy what they're doing at the same time. So here's her race tempos from Barcelona. You can see in the 400, she was at 1:35, which I thought was real good for her, okay? The 200, she was rushing it. I don't know whether we'll ever get her to be natural at that speed. The 1500, I think, obviously was real good. If you look at similar numbers for Sun Yang and for Connor and somebody else, and Russell Mark pulls all this together. Thank you, Russell. You see that same type of thing as they move down in distance. Obviously, their tempo goes up or down, whichever way you like to think about tempo. But having worked with her over the course of the year, that 400 at 135, 136 is a real good place for her to swim. And I'm convinced that the 400 there was her best swim. It was the one that was not a world record, but I think it was by far her best swim there. When we compare a couple things later, you can see why I thought the 800 wasn't quite so good. You probably can't read, maybe you can read that. The top one is her 400 from Barcelona. The bottom one is her 400 from Olympic trials last year. And they're swimming both at about the same tempo in that 135 range that I like to see her at. The best thing about the 400 swim in Barcelona are the last three 100s, for her especially. 006, 005, 005. And that is a control and a managing of a race that we hadn't seen before, at least I hadn't seen from her before. There was always more of an element of fly and die than she exhibited there. So that was a good thing. The tempo was great. That's a range that I'd love to see her swim at. I think we can swim at that same tempo up to an 800. I don't know that we can at a 1500, but I'm not really concerned about that at this point. Let's see here if we can talk about our underwaters. Whoops. And I'll pull up some videos here, maybe. Whoops. Let's see. All right, so here are a couple of our underwaters from last year in London. Maybe? No? Why isn't this working? Opening in 30 seconds. What? Well, somebody told me there was a slow internet connection here. Now I believe them. No, I'm not going to wait for that to open. I'll send you the presentation at some point, and you can look them up. The links are out there for anybody to get to. You can see her underwater, 800 underwaters from London, 1 to 2 weak kicks off each wall. It's just kind of a forced one and a weak second one at best. And they had really good underwater over there in London. Whoops. Okay, so there's her leading, 1 weak kick, and then off she goes. And that's really about all she exhibited throughout the race. 1 weak kick and off she goes. And those were 800s in London. I guess this is showing the same one over and over. Okay, and they were all about like that. Here's a later one in the race. 1 weak kick and off she goes. And that's where she was then. And you say, oh, what did you do to work on them? Well, we talked about them some in practice. Not maybe as much as I would like to even, but we certainly talked about them some. But I think the dry land is what got her to do better underwaters. I distinctly remember a day in March or April we were doing a 75 build, 25 race, and probably the terminology I used. Maybe it was 75 cruise, 25 fast, I don't know. And all of a sudden she's coming off that last wall and going 6 and 8 kicks underwater. And I would love to know exactly why it came there, but I think it was the dry land as much as anything else, and her just getting stronger and learning how to use her body. I'm not even going to try this next video. The next video is from the Mesa Grand Prix. For those of you that were there, she was racing Missy in the 200 free. She went into her third turn at Missy's feet, and for the first time in a race environment, I saw her use it as a real weapon. She took a good 4 or 5 kicks coming off the last wall, picked up maybe a third of a body length on Missy, maybe as much as half of a body length. And that was the first time I saw in a race environment where she was using it as a weapon.